Welcome, everyone. I'm Ephraim Katsir. I extend belated wishes for Ochi Day to everyone, which was yesterday. Sephardic Heritage International in DC, or SHIN DC, is delighted to host Rachel Vallely Glazer's three-part series, The Jews of Greece from Antiquity to the Present, with the Embassy of Greece to the USA and the Embassy of Israel to the US. We would like to acknowledge some of our members, SHIN partners, Rose and Robert Capon, who dedicate this program in loving memory of Daniel Capon and Sophie Sasbon Capon, Alehem Shalom. We also recognize the Vallely and Glazer families who dedicate this program in loving memory of Emmanuel and Emily Vallely, Alehem Shalom. The opening remarks for Rachel Vallely Glazer's second session today, titled The Holocaust Years, How My Family Survived, will now be given by Her Excellency ALEXANDRA Papadopoulou, Ambassador of Greece to the US.
Good evening. Dear friends and members of Sephardic Heritage International, it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here with you tonight, and thank you for inviting me to join you. Congratulations for organizing what I'm sure will be a quite interesting event. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about the experiences of the family of Rachel Vallely Glazer. I know that this is a story of both profound loss and survival. This event is really timely. At this time of the year, yesterday, we celebrated Ochi Day. Thank you for the wishes. And this is the day when we reflect upon what happened in World War II. And we reflect about the evil that human beings can inflict upon other human beings. We reflect on aggression, reflect on loss, we reflect on resistance also, and we reflect on cases of light and brightness in the midst of horror and untold pain. And we honor the resistance of the Greek people that refused to surrender to fascism and Nazism and chose the road of sacrifice. The events of World War II, the events of October 28th, which is Ochi Day, have marked the hearts and souls of successive Greek generations. And it's also a source of pride for our ancestors. And also it's a source of determination that history will not be allowed to repeat itself, that we will never forget, and we will never surrender. During this anniversary, we commemorate the bravery and resistance. And we commemorate also light over darkness, fight over surrender. We commemorate the power, the strength of life and survival. By the end of World War II, Greece was left in ruins. It is estimated that my country, barely at that time, around 8 million people, lost over 700,000 people, which is 10% of its population. 60,000 Greek Jews perished. It was a big loss, a terrible story. Pretty much the entire Jewish population of Thessaloniki disappeared. This is an enormous loss. We have, of course, some people like the Archbishop of Athens, the Chief of Police, and great Greek individuals who helped our Jewish compatriots to survive. We helped them to hide, to withstand all this horror and see a better day. But nevertheless, we cannot forget our Jewish compatriots who perished. After the war, many moved to Israel. Many moved to the United States. A big number, not as big as we wished, remained in Greece. And today, they're a vibrant part of the Greek society with big contribution to science, letters, politics, you name it. We, as the Greek state, want to make sure, and we strive to make sure, that the younger generations and the future generations learn about these events and that they never forget. This coming year, we celebrate the 200th anniversary of Greek independence. But also, this coming year, Greece will hold the annual presidency of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. This goes hand in hand. We wanted to celebrate our past by celebrating all the parts of Greek society. And the contributions of our Jewish compatriots to Greek society, to the Greek state, is immeasurable. We honor them, we're proud of them, and in the memory of those who were lost, we swear that this will not happen again and that we will never forget. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope you have every success.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Alexandra Papadopoulou, for your most fitting remarks. We had a wonderful webinar last Thursday, and now turn to our speaker, Rachel Vallely-Glaser, for part 2 of 3 of our webinar series, The Holocaust Years, How My Family Survived.
Kalispera σας. Good evening. Thank you, Ephraim. I also want to thank the Embassy of Greece for their support for this program, and also Alexandra Papadopoulou, Charika Poli, Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Thank you for your introduction and for being here. And it's a pleasure for me to return once again for part 2. I also wanted to thank everyone for your participation last week. I read all the chats, and it seems like all of us have had the experience of people not knowing who we are when we say we're Greek Jews. They just don't get it. So we just have to keep on teaching them. So thank you for that. The first 8 years of my life were spent in the port city of Patras on the Peloponnesus in southern Greece. So I grew up in the port city of Patras on the Peloponnesus. I was born 4 years after the Holocaust. The majority of the Jews of Patras were Romaniote in culture, tracing their Jewish lineage to Roman times. My father, having completed his education in accounting, owned a textile store, as textiles were one of the primary occupations of Greek Jews. It was a small, close-knit Jewish community of about 100 people. Our synagogue was the center of our small Jewish world, with everyone sharing in the upkeep, women taking turns to polish the silver ornaments, others to wash and polish the floors. The synagogue was constructed in the Romaniote tradition, with the center aisle marked by the ark on the eastern wall and the bima on the opposite western wall, and the wooden pews arranged sideways, facing the center aisle. The women's seats were on a slightly raised platform behind a lattice divider on the side. Our parents and grandparents volunteered for the Chevra Kadisha to take care of the dead, and families shared potluck meals in the sukkah, gathering together for huge seders and other community and family events. A wedding, a brit milah, or a funeral was to be shared by all. Jews and non-Jews alike socialized together, sharing family events and helping one another. My sisters and I attended a Greek Orthodox private school for girls, one of the best schools in the region. Although we were the only students that were Jewish, we were accepted fully and were excused from religion classes. When things were financially hard after the war, the school begged my parents not to transfer us to the public school. The school would pay the tuitions for all 3 of us. I should add that our brother attended public school, since common thinking was that the boys did not need as delicate and as protective an environment as did the girls. My memories of my childhood are happy ones, for which I am often nostalgic. But little did I know how broken and impoverished our Greek Jewish community had become since the Holocaust. and little did I realize that the decision to leave Greece would lay heavily on my parents for a long time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's return to the years before my birth. Last week, we spoke about the fact that the existence of Greek Jews is not generally well known. Today, we will discuss another little known story, the Holocaust in Greece, and the almost total destruction of this ancient Jewish community. On the eve of World War II, about 77 Jews lived in Greece, with about 56 of them in Salonika. By the end of the war, 87% had perished. Some say 90%, or even 95%. Only 10,000 managed to survive Hitler's attack on Greece and assault on the Jews. 67,000 had been murdered in the death camps or had died of disease and hard labor. Out of all the countries occupied by the Nazis, Greece lost the largest percentage of its population. Of the 10,000 who survived, 5,000 did so by hiding or by being helped by friends, strangers, government officials, or clergy. 3,000 found safety among the partisan resistance fighters, and 2,000 were liberated from the camps by the Allies and returned to Greece. All who came back found emptiness and destruction in their once thriving communities. In some cases, the losses were total. In Salonika, only 5% of the 56,000 Jews survived. Historians and scholars have asked this question: why was the destruction of Greek Jewry so vast? Several theories have been given. One, Greek Jewish society was extremely family-oriented, and individuals chose to stay with their families rather than seek escape if it meant abandoning family. Two, Greek Jews who were transported to the camps in Poland had a long and difficult journey in cattle cars with little food, water, or hygiene, resulting in a much higher death rate during the journey. Three, the language gap of the Greek Jews who were transported to Polish camps made escape attempts essentially unsuccessful, as they could not communicate with Eastern European folks who might have been helpful. Four, Greek Jews were not used to the climate of Eastern Europe, especially the winters, resulting in quicker deaths. And five, because of their strength from having worked in the ports of Greece, many Greek Jewish men in the death camps were assigned to the dreaded Sonderkommando squads, who supervised and cleaned up the bodies after each gassing operation, a horrific and back-breaking task. These squads were routinely killed every 3 to 4 months, so as to prevent the survival of any eyewitnesses to the Nazi death machine. Sonderkommando hardly ever survived. And there may be other reasons as well. But regardless the reason, the Holocaust in Greece brought almost total annihilation to a proud community that survived and adapted through 2,000 plus years of history. And still, the Greek Holocaust has not been widely studied and is often not even mentioned in history books. The history of the Holocaust in Greece is a complicated one, with occupation of different zones by different Axis powers. It is filled with hardships and loss, but it also includes acts of heroism and survival, and amazing examples of friendship and Jewish-Christian cooperation. The Greek-Italian War was a precursor to World War II. Italy's initial attack on Greece on October 28, 1940, as we just heard, was met with a resounding όχι, meaning no. Since then, Greece has continued to celebrate Ohi Day as a national holiday with parades and pogroms honoring Greek bravery. I might also say that it is my birthday, Ohi Day. Following Italy's subsequent retreat, Germany and her allies took over the invasion in 1941. As soon as the Germans entered Greece, they implemented oppressive policies for all Greeks, leading to unbearable suffering, famine, and disease. All the hospitals were taken over for the German wounded, while the country's sick and starving were thrown out. Jews and Christians shared the initial hardships of the occupation until Germany divided Greece into 3 occupation zones, assigning each zone to an occupying power who would carry out Nazi anti-Jewish policies. The German zone included parts in northern Greece, including Salonika, mostly Sephardic Jews, about 58,000 altogether. The Bulgarian zone included the smaller Greek communities near the Bulgarian border, also mostly Sephardic Jews, about 5,400. The Italian zone included the bulk of the mainland, central and southern Greece, the Peloponnesus, Athens, most of the islands, and other communities of mostly Romanio Jews, about 14,000. My hometown of Patras, the 3rd largest city of Greece, was in this zone. The fate of the Jews in the German and Bulgarian zones was largely death at the camps or on the transports by disease, malnutrition, or murder. Sadly, some Greek government officials complied with German orders and assisted eagerly in carrying them out. The first Jewish community to be affected in the German zone was Salonika, that old and proud mother of Israel. The Nazis occupied the city on April 8, 1941. Humiliation and persecution quickly followed, including printing anti-Semitic publications, arresting community leaders, confiscating Jewish libraries, manuscripts, and art, and desecrating Jewish cemeteries, using the tombstones for building projects. Within a year, 9,000 Salonika Jews were sent to forced labor until the community could ransom them for 3 billion drachmas. Although this amount of money impoverished the community, all felt it was worth the lives of the men, along with an agreement to not disturb the city's Jews for a year. As expected, however, as soon as the ransom was paid in full, the signed agreement was worthless. By 1943, the dreaded Nuremberg laws were put into effect, mandating that Jews wear the Star of David, that Jewish businesses be marked, and that the Jews be forced into ghettos, which had never before existed in the great city of Salonika. German propaganda and the gullibility of the Jewish leadership combined to mislead the Jews into believing that nothing harmful would happen. Much of the Greek public themselves, shocked and in disbelief, kept silent as their neighbors began to disappear. Believing that obedience was the best course, Chief Rabbi Tzvi Koretz himself instructed the people to gather for resettlement at the town's Eleftheria Square, or Liberty Square. The people heeded the call, arriving at the city center. Rabbi Koretz's role in his city's deportation has long been a debated subject. Many consider the rabbi in a negative light as a Nazi collaborator who handed over the names of Salonika's Jews and facilitated their deportation. Others believe that Koretz was made the scapegoat upon whom Salonika Jews could attribute the destruction of their community, and Christian Greeks could absolve themselves of any blame. Resettlement for these Jews meant Auschwitz, with deportations beginning on March 1943. 58,000 plus Jews from this German zone were sent to Auschwitz on 18 trains supplied by the Greek railways. Upon their arrival, most were sent directly to the gas chambers. Only 2,200 returned. Jews in the Bulgarian zone suffered a similar fate, with persecution beginning immediately. First, the Nuremberg laws, forcing Jews to wear the Star of David, submit personal records of family wealth, move into prescribed areas, and turn over all valuables. In March 1943, all Jews in the Bulgarian zone were arrested and imprisoned. Their destination would be Treblinka. Of the 5,400 arrested and deported, only 120 survived. We do know that Bulgaria saved their own Jewish citizens, but that did not lessen their cruelty to their occupied territories. By the summer of 1943, the extermination of the Greek Jews in the German and Bulgarian zones was complete. But we must also note that there were extraordinary acts of resistance and heroism. Because of their strength from their work on the docks back home, many of Salonika's Jewish men were assigned to the Sonderkommando forces, who supervised the gas chambers and crematoria. On October 2, 1944, in Auschwitz, the Sonderkommando squad, made up mostly of Salonika men, took part in an uprising to kill as many Nazi guards as they possibly could. Only 3 Nazi guards were killed, but hundreds of Jews were killed in retaliation. Another account is that of a small town called Katerini outside Salonika, where all the Jews survived because of police chief Papadopoulous' intervention and warning to flee. Within 2 hours, every Jew was given provisions and fled the city, finding shelter in the remote villages of Mount Olympus. Neighbors who were asked to hold furniture and other valuables for safekeeping returned everything to their Jewish citizens after the liberation. 43 out of the 45 Jews of Katerini survived because of the kindness of their neighbors. Whereas such acts of assistance and rescues stand out as exceptions in the German and Bulgarian zones, the Jews in the Italian zone had the best chance of survival. Why? Even though Italy was Germany's ally, the Italian army did not enforce German policies regarding the killing of Jews. Actually, the Italians did much to make life for the Jews bearable, so much so that the Jews hardly felt threatened. Jews in other zones tried desperately to get into the Italian zone, especially Athens, where the Jewish population actually grew during the war because of these migrations. My mother liked to tell the story of the Italian guard who was responsible for their neighborhood. Although he had to enforce the food rations and curfews, he was kind and responsive to the people's needs. Because my parents had 2 young children, my 2 older sisters, this guard often brought extra rations of milk, grain, and bread for them. He would stop to greet them on the street and play with my sisters, especially since my parents and grandparents also spoke Italian. The joke was that Italians were never interested in fighting. They much preferred wine, song, and love. And I'd just like to point out the picture on the truck. The little girl is my older sister, Josephine. She's there being friendly with the soldiers. So while deportations had already begun in the northern German and Bulgarian zones, Jews in the southern Italian zone lived under a guarded, relatively benign occupation, but with a false sense of security. With the collapse of Italy in September 1943, Germany took over direct responsibility for this zone. This signaled a drastic change for the Jews in these areas as well, and the beginning of the end. Deportations began immediately, as if to make up for lost time. However, here in the former Italian zone, many Greeks were willing to protect the Jews and were encouraged to do so by both the Greek Orthodox Church and the civil leadership. In Athens, Archbishop Damaskinos openly preached to his people to hide Jews in their homes. He personally helped hide 250 Jewish children in Christian homes, issuing forged papers and baptismal certificates. Monasteries and convents became places of refuge, and the police chief himself, Angelos Evert, issued Jews false papers so they could pass as non-Jews. Thousands of Jews were saved because of the effort of Greek Christians. Over 600 Greek Orthodox priests were arrested and deported in retaliation for helping Jews. There are those who believe that the Jews in the Italian zone fared better because there was more time for them to devise a flight or a rescue plan, since the Germans entered this zone relatively late in the war. Others theorize that because most of these Jews were Romaniot in culture and had lived among Greeks for thousands of years, they had become more integrated with Greeks and were more likely to be helped by them. Those who survived in this area did so by escaping across the sea to Turkey, hiding in the mountains, being protected by non-Jews, joining the partisan resistance fighters, or just mixing in with the local populations. Many non-Jewish Greeks took personal risks and went out of their way to help their Jewish friends and neighbors, even strangers. There was a great feeling of solidarity between Jews and non-Jews, both patriotic to their homeland, both hating the German Nazis, both determined to survive. My family survived. Our city of Patras had a small Jewish community of about 300. By the time the Nazis occupied southern Greece in 1943, the Jews had heard of the mass killings and deportations in the north. In anticipation of such a fate, my parents made contact with a non-Jewish family who lived in a mountain village not far from Patras. For the next year, the Michaelis family would be the key to my family's survival. The village of Michaleka was populated almost entirely by members of the extended Michaelis family. The patriarch of the village was Elias Michaelis, who owned and managed the village winery, the town's main source of income. Elias was known to be a man of compassion, of principle, and a fierce Greek patriot. He agreed to shelter 9 members of my family, my parents Emily and Emmanuel, their 2 young daughters, ages 6 and 1 year, my father's 3 brothers, Victor, Joseph, and Abraham, and my father's parents. Why take the risk to shelter not only strangers, but Jews? Elias was quick to say, Greeks must help fellow Greeks. Michaleka was in the mountains and could only be reached by foot or mules on rocky paths and over rough terrain. The isolated location and inaccessibility of the village, along with the solidarity and unity of the villagers, made this an ideal place to hide from the Germans. Loading up a few possessions, food and clothing, the Villeli family made the long, rough 2-day journey on foot and on mules to the village. It was September 1943, the eve of Rosh Hashanah, and the future was uncertain. The Michaelises gave my family rent-free a 2-room crude peasant house in which to stay. Although it was above a cattle shed, although it had no running water, and although it was crowded, still it provided a roof over their heads. My sisters played with the Michaelis children, and the Villeli women and men helped with chores and farm work. The family settled to a sort of routine for the next 4 to 5 months, hoping to hear of good news from the war front. Being a Greek patriot, Elias was also a supporter of the resistance and allowed a British intelligence unit to establish its base in the village. This unit made secret broadcasts to the British about Nazi troop strength and activities. Soon, however, in early 1944, the German army discovered this operation and marched to the village to destroy the base and the British agents. Fortunately, the villagers had been warned of the invasion. Fearing for their safety, the villagers fled further into the mountains, and the British agents were able to escape unharmed. Even though the Germans did not find the enemy agents, they still held the village responsible for harboring the British, and specifically Elias Michaelis, the head of the village. When the villagers returned, they saw that the Michaelis house had been burnt down in revenge for helping the British and to intimidate the villagers. Their home destroyed, the Michaelis family now moved into the small peasant house together with my family. Now 14 people sharing the 2 rooms, each family in 1 room. The Nazis came a second time in April 1944. Again, the villagers evacuated, except for my grandparents, who were unable to make the strenuous walk deep into the mountains. This time, the Germans discovered a British cache of explosives that had been hidden by the underground. Immediately, the explosives were used to destroy the entire village of Michaleka, house by house. All buildings were dynamited and razed, including the winery, which was the basis of the village economy. My grandparents, who had remained behind in the Michaelis shed, heard each explosion as they crouched, hidden in the cellar. Luckily, one soldier decided to check each house to see for any people. Before setting the explosion, he yelled at my grandparents to get out. Just in time, my grandparents got out and watched their only means of shelter collapse. They continued to wait outside to see if their family and their protectors would return. Everyone did return, only to find their dear village destroyed. Everyone was now homeless. Everyone had to pick up the pieces and put together makeshift shelters as best they could. The village never recovered from this destruction. Knowing that it would be impossible to continue to hide my family in a village that had nothing left, Mr. Michaelis directed my family to friends of his in a nearby village of Domestica. Here, my family rented a house, waiting out the rest of the war. Meanwhile, back in Michaleka, the Michaelises moved into a half-standing shed and tried to salvage what they could of their possessions and their vineyards. In October 1944, the Nazis suffered significant defeats by the Allied armies and were forced to retreat from Greece. Greeks celebrated their liberation. As my parents emerged from hiding and began trying to locate various members of our extended family, they learned how huge the destruction was for the Jews of Greece. Numerous loved ones, sisters, brothers, cousins, and friends had perished. Some were able to go to Palestine, and others connected with relatives in countries outside of Europe. The Jewish population of Patras was now 100. My father's 2 brothers were also killed, but not by the Nazis. A byproduct of World War II was a civil war in Greece. As the Germans retreated, a bitter power struggle was waged between the communists and the royalists, as each vied for the hearts of the Greek people. After having fought against the Nazis, the communists now turned against fellow Greeks, viciously killing anyone suspected of royalist sympathies. My father's two brothers, Victor and Joseph, were rounded up because they had helped British intelligence forces at the village during the German occupation. Anyone who had helped the British was now seen as a royalist, supporting the Greek monarchy. Truly, it was a tragedy for two young Jewish men to have survived the Nazis and then to be gunned down by fellow Greeks over political unrest and civil war. Many Greeks were assassinated during this terrible time in the country's history. Mr. Michaelis, along with other villagers, was also taken by the communists who invaded the village. Mrs. Michaelis sent her 3 children to other safer villages while she remained trying to tend the war-ravaged vineyards and waiting for news for her husband. When all was over, my parents, their 2 daughters, my father's remaining brother, and their elderly parents returned to Patras a little over a year after they had left to hide. Meanwhile, Mr. Michaelis gained his release from the communists and returned to his village, sick and fearful of the future. The village was no longer the same. Everything he had was gone. The family also moved to Patras to start a new life in the city. But life was never the same as it had been before the war. Meeting again in Patras, my father offered payment to Mr. Michaelis for his life-saving help, but this was repeatedly refused. By an interesting set of coincidences, both my family and the Michaelis family emigrated to Baltimore. My parents, now with 4 children, my brother and I having been born after the war, came with the help of HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and the Michaelises with the help of family members who had already settled here. And by yet another coincidence, they managed to find each other in Baltimore. The reunion of the 2 families, one Jewish and the other Christian, was joyful and emotional. Our 2 families remained lifelong friends in America. The survival of the Jews on the island of Zakynthos, also in the Italian zone, is an everlasting tribute to the many righteous Gentiles who saved Jewish families. Because of the efforts of Bishop Chrysostomos and Mayor Lucas Carrer, all 25 Jews on the island survived. This was truly unusual. For the most part, Jewish populations on the islands, as in Corfu, Crete, and Rhodes, suffered great losses since they were trapped and had nowhere to go, except on the German deportation ships. But the experience on Zakynthos was different. When the German commander of the island asked for a list of Jews, Mayor Carrer explained that the Jews were listed in the island catalogs together with every other citizen, and a separate list could not be procured. Carrer's widow wrote this in her memoirs. The bishop and my husband were really afraid, actually terrified. It was dangerous. They could be caught and jailed and possibly tortured by the Germans. But no Christian betrayed the Jews. It was the general spirit of the time. It wasn't just the bravery of the mayor and the bishop. No Zakyntian turned in any Jewish name, not one. They were actions of duty, my husband's and everyone else's, toward our fellow man. We did not consider Jews different from ourselves. When the commander insisted on getting the list, the mayor and Bishop Chrysostomos did hand over a document. Taking a paper out of his pocket, the bishop said 4 words that would continue to echo throughout the history of the Greek Holocaust. Here are your Jews, pointing only 2 names, the bishops and the mayors, and nothing more. The bishop then said these words, according to your orders, you can arrest me and not them. And if that does not satisfy you, then I will show you how close I am to these innocent Jewish families. I will follow them in their dramatic march, and along with them, I will enter the gas chambers and the crematorium. What an amazing speech. By then, all 275 Jews had been informed and had successfully fled to the mountain villages. They were taken in by Christian families for the duration of the war. Since then, this incident has been referred to as the miracle at Zakynthos, and the island as the island of the righteous. A shining example of what one or two individuals in one city or one island did in the name of humanity. And many other Greek citizens were willing to take the risk to help. We must also mention the Greek resistance movement that also made great effort to help the Jews. In 1943, in the midst of the war, the Greek resistance movement issued a historic proclamation, unlike any other resistant movements in Europe had ever done. For all Greek people, brothers and sisters, a new crime against our people is planned by the conqueror. We face a new demonstration of fascist brutality, which this time affects the Jewish members of the Greek people. The bloody conqueror prepares one of the most formidable and disgusting pogroms against the Greek Jews, like those which were organized in Germany and Poland. This new crime is not directed only against Greek Jews, but against the Greek people, because Greek Jews are part of our people, because their fate is connected with the fate of the entire people. For this reason, the National Liberation Front invites all Greeks and every Christian to help in the salvation of the Jews, with mass protests, committees, and general mobilizations in order to prevent the horrible pogrom, which is in its planning stage. Let's give shelter and hiding places to every fugitive Jew. These are incredible words of solidarity with the Jewish people. The Michaelis family is now listed among the righteous in the Holocaust Memorial in Washington, D.C., and in Jerusalem's Yad Vashem, as are the names of Bishop Chrysostomos and Mayor Carrer, Archbishop Damaskinos and Mayor Evert, and all those who helped save even one Jew. A tree has been planted in the Avenue of the Righteous in their honor, and we were so pleased when some of the Michaelis family were able to personally visit Israel and Yad Vashem. In 1984, Elias and Catherine Michaelis and my parents were featured in Baltimore's Yom HaShoah ceremony in honor of the Michaelis' recognition. When they were asked about why they risked their own safety to protect a Jewish family, Elias and Catherine answered, "We did nothing special, only what any decent person would do." But for our family, their actions were extraordinary, making the difference between life and death. As of 2014, 321 Greek citizens have been given this honor by Yad Vashem. Following the war, both Greece and Greek Jewry were in shambles. 87% of the Jewish population had perished. The Sephardic population was mostly wiped out, and the Jews of most of the islands all but disappeared. Of the large cities, only Athens escaped major destruction and became the new Jewish center. The civil war that raged between 1944 to 1949, as well as the devastating earthquakes between 1953 and 1955, brought more instability. Greece was demoralized and wounded, unable to welcome back her survivors or to extend a helping hand. Both Greece and her Jewish survivors depended on international assistance for renewal. The rehabilitation program for the Jewish community came from the American Joint Distribution Committee, who even gave money to motivate Jewish survivors to marry once more and to begin life anew. In 2013, we celebrated my mother's 100th birthday, And our honored guests were the children and grandchildren of Elias and Catherine Michaelis, the two individuals to whom my parents were forever grateful. It was truly an emotional and inspiring celebration. Today, there are only about 5,000 Jews left in Greece of both Romaniote and Sephardic heritage, 3,000 in Athens, 1,000 in Salonika, and 1,000 scattered around the other cities. There are no Jews today in my hometown of Patras. Our little synagogue closed its doors in 1979. Its books and furnishings were relocated to the Jewish Museum in Athens as a permanent reminder of the life that was. The Patras Jewish Cemetery is overgrown and locked. The ancient and once thriving Greek Jewish community is now one of the smallest Jewish populations in Europe. The Holocaust brought unimaginable losses: population decline, economic hardships, psychological trauma, sociological disruption, and spiritual depression. Greek Jewry today is shrinking. Jewish young people are either moving to Israel, where they see a Jewish future, or remain in Greece out of family obligations, often intermarrying because of a lack of a viable Jewish community. Greek Jewish leadership worries about the future. Also troubling is the rise of anti-Semitism in Greece, as in all of Europe, led by the right-wing political party Golden Dawn, which espouses neo-Nazi ideology. On a positive note, as we heard from Tammy Ben-Chaim of the Israeli embassy, and as we heard today from ALEXANDRA Papadopoulou, the Greek court recently ruled against the leadership of Golden Dawn for leading a criminal organization and convicted some of its members. Holocaust education is now a part of the curriculum in the Greek school system, and the government is taking action against hate speech, anti-Semitism, and Holocaust denial. At last, memorials have been erected to commemorate lost Jewish communities and to honor both those who lost their lives and those who risked theirs to save others. And the renewal of strong diplomatic ties between Greece and Israel brings us hope that these two cultures can once again work together in many positive ways. Finally, there is a new interest in learning about the Jews of Greece and about the Greek Holocaust, so that Greek Jews no longer have to feel forgotten or dismissed. The story of Greek Jewry is now being written and told. It is a story of survival of the longest continuing Jewish presence in the European diaspora, through many world changes and challenges. The Greek Jewish heritage, both Romaniote and Sephardic, is now recognized as a valued part of the Jewish experience. Our stories are powerful ones, with inspiring lessons and memories to pass down to the next generation. My parents never stopped missing their native homeland. They continue to feel proud of their dual Greek-Jewish heritage, and they never felt quite at home as Americans. Life in America was hard and often lonely. They longed for their close-knit community, the friendships they had had with fellow Jews and non-Jews. At home, they insisted that we children continue to speak Greek, for which we are very glad. But as hard as it was for them to begin again in a new land, they never forgot how fortunate they were to have survived, to have had the opportunity to come to this country, to have seen their family grow, and to have benefited from the kindness of others along the way. I hope that you will join me next week as we conclude this series on a lighter note, celebrating the unique rituals and traditions of Greek Jewry, along with some authentic music. Efcharisto, thank you very much. And we take some comments and questions if you have.
Thank you, Rachel. I would like to thank again Her Excellency Alexandra Papadopoulou for opening remarks. Her Excellency Alexandra Papadopoulou would like to make a comment.
Just to make a comment, thank you for giving me the time. It was really touching, and it's a wonderful story. What you told us, it's amazing. I just thank you so much for including me in this evening, in this event. Just to underline, Golden Dawn was, there was a decision by the court just 2 weeks ago. All of the leadership are in prison. They got very heavy prison terms, and all of the leadership of this criminal organization, as the court declared it, are behind bars for a long, long period of time. And also a very positive thing was that in the last elections, Golden Dawn was not elected in the Greek parliament. So we hope, and this was just a phenomenon coming out of the huge economic crisis that Greece went through these past 10 years, and that Golden Dawn and its followers belong to, they're finished in Greek political and life. Thank you so much. I appreciate it so very much.
Thank you, Alexandra, for that.
That's great news. Thank you, Excellency. Thanks to Shin's co-host, the Embassy of Greece to the USA and the Embassy of Israel to the US. Thanks again to Minister Tammy Ben-Haim, who shared the opening remarks for part 1 of our series last week. We'd now like to call on the audience for you to ask your questions. I believe Mona has a question. Her question was, how did your parents decide, Rachel, to go to the village that they went to?
Oh, so, okay, good question. Well, some of the details I left out, but one of my father's brothers, I believe it was Victor, was in a ski club, and the ski club, one of the Michaelis family members was in the ski club, and they met, and the discussion came up. And the plan was through that contact, they offered to open their home to us, and that's how that transpired.
I have a question, Rachel. What was the trip to Israel like with the Michaelis family, and were your parents?
They weren't
there with them?
No, unfortunately, none of us were able to go at the time. So they went, not the whole family. And I think that it was quite, they felt very honored. They're very humble people. Never wanted to have the spotlight. And when Baltimore featured them on one of their 1984 for their Yom HaShoah program, that was like a big deal to them. Very emotional, but they were felt very honored, and were really touched by that.
We have a question from the RLE family.
Why did my parents choose to go to Baltimore after the war? Okay, well, yes. So sometimes Highest decided for people where to go. Sometimes they gave a choice. So of course the choice would be if you had other family members. So at the time, I believe that, and my sister Regina is here listening, she can correct me if I'm wrong. My parents got 3 choices. One was Los Angeles, the other was St. Paul, Minnesota, and the other was Baltimore. And my father said, forget Minnesota, it's way too cold for us from the Mediterranean. In Los Angeles, my father's sister was there with her husband. They were having a hard time financially and weren't able to offer any support. And then we had the other was Baltimore, where my mother's niece, who is a survivor, and her husband lived and family. And so we told Highest we chose Baltimore.
Linda Kinsberg.
First, I want to say thank you so much. I grew up in the Lower East Side by the Greek Shul. I spent my early years there with my grandmother. I'd love to go to the library right behind you and look at all those.
Oh, my library.
Thank you so much. I was wondering what, two things. Before the Holocaust, because I know now that there's not that many, was there a Torah learning going on, or was it just more Greek culture? What was the religious aspect?
Well, there was a lot of Torah learning. Were you here? Were you at the last week's session?
Unfortunately, my husband had to take my
Okay,
husband to the
so
hospital.
covered some of that. Salonika had, over 30 synagogues, actually more, about 60 synagogues by the time of before the war. Several Jewish day schools, yeshivot. So there was a lot of Torah learning. Of course, in the smaller communities, it was a little, maybe not as much, but a lot of the learning was done through the rabbi teaching the boys for their b'nai mitzvah. So yes, there was. And what happened after the war, of course, we know that the entire infrastructure of the Jewish community was completely destroyed.
Right.
But there is now in Athens, there are 2 synagogues. There's a day school in Salonika, elementary school, and synagogues there.
Talk about the key.
Thank you.
Resource. Oh, you wanted to know about a resource to search for relatives? Did you ask that as well?
Yeah, Annette Fromm had asked me, had told me maybe I should start out with my shul that I grew up in. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
The one on the Lower East Side.
Yeah, are you talking about Kehila Kadosha?
Yeah,
that's
my grandparents were members there when they first opened, and
oh, that's great.
And one of the challenges, many of us, my mother married an Ashkenaz, I married Ashkenazi, so we kind of lose the traditions. And I'm trying to, thank God I have wonderful grandchildren. I try to take them, but they're like 1/8 Greek, But I'm trying to keep
it's hard.
keep going.
Right.
Yeah, but thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really learned.
Paulette,
Not the question.
you have a
I
comment?
want to comment, Rachel, because the presentation was so moving and it resonated with me because I had very similar experiences in Poland and then moving to Athens to hide. So it moved me very much. Thank you, Rachel.
no, thank you for that. Thank you.
If I may, I have a question. My grandmother lived in Egypt, and she was originally from the island of Corfu. I think in Greek it's Kerkyra.
Right.
And living in Egypt, they spoke Greek and Italian at home. How did they get the Italian? I can understand them getting the Greek, but how did they get the Italian?
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good question. We spoke Greek and Italian at home as well, as did many Romaniot. So were you at last week's talk?
No, I missed it, unfortunately.
No, so we have to go back to the Greco-Roman Empire, which is where the Romanio Jews trace their lineage to. So at first it was Greek was the spoken language, but then it, as it developed over the years, then Rome and Italy, so Italian became part of the Romanio culture as well. And so, and also the Corfu especially was held by Italy for a long time. So that was one of the languages spoken in Corfu. So that's why many Romanio also speak Italian, not Ladino, not the Greco-Spanish.
By the way, it was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. It was beautiful.
Somebody had a question about the slide with the bended knees and the photo of the Salonika. Those were the men that were rounded up and had to do all day different sorts of exercises and poses and humiliations. That was part of that.
Yes, I was asking about that. It's Joyce. Yes.
Yes.
That wasn't quite clear. Thank you for that. And thank you for this wonderful, wonderful lecture. I did want to contribute that The Lost Jews of Castoria was made into a film, and it is an excellent film. I worked with Art Benveniste for years with the Sephardic Film Festival in Los Angeles. And we found many incredible films that we could talk about next time, perhaps. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
it's a great film.
Yeah.
I'm Art Benvenisti. I once organized a common service between our synagogue and the Greek Orthodox Church, and Michael Dukakis was present for that. But what I'm getting at is the Greek Consul General in Los Angeles gave me a book about the Spanish ambassador to Athens named Redagales, who gave Spanish citizenship to the Jews of Athens who had Spanish names. And some years later, I met a Jew from Athens with the same last name that I have. And I asked him how he survived the war. And he said, because he had Spanish citizenship. My family's from the island of Rhodes that was ruled by the Italians until the fall of Mussolini. But my uncle told me, under Italian rule, he didn't persecute Jews directly, but there were limits on the kinds of occupations that Jews could have.
Right.
And my uncle had a position with a trading company that Jews were not supposed to have. So they just changed his title and he remained doing the same job at the same pay and nobody minded.
Right.
That's the Italians.
That's the Italians, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. A very good talk.
Thank you, thank you.
This is Burl. Fascinating talk. I'm sorry I wasn't here for the first one. I'll have to catch up. I'm just learning about the Jews of Greece and Romeo Jews, and I was curious. Maybe you covered this in the first the series, but was there much anti-Semitism in Greece prior to World War II? Like, you know, the fact that they're all Greek, that was really important, and national identity was very important to people of Greek heritage. And so I just didn't know if anti-Semitism was as prevalent. And like when people returned, if they were able to return, the small numbers that did return, could they still have their property if it wasn't destroyed by the Germans and things like that? I mean, I was just curious.
Yeah, so was there anti-Semitism before? Yes, there was, but never to the extent of European anti-Semitism in the Eastern Europe and Central Europe. So it was very different. It also was during different periods of Greece's history, like when they were during the period of nationalization and during the independence from the Turks, trying to make one Greek nation. Then there were heightened emotions, and especially because many of the Greeks were closer to the Ottoman Empire, they were accused of being disloyal. And there was one big pogrom in the 1830s that was unusual to happen in Greece, where 5,000 Jews were killed. But in general, no, the anti-Semitism never went to the level of what we know as European anti-Semitism. Also, it also depended, like on Easter, you would have heightened emotions in terms of, the accusation of having to do with, Jews killing Jesus, and people would throw, different things on the doors of the Jewish houses. But it was very surreal, because it was almost as if that happened. And then the next day you went in the street and you said hello to everybody. So there was some, but it was not to the extent that we read about in places in Europe.
Thank you very much. And a fascinating presentation. I can't wait to be here next week. Thank you so much.
Please do join us again next week, November 5th, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please join us for part 3 of 3, Customs and Rituals of Greek Jews, a celebration of family, holidays, and culture.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, Yasher Koach, Rachel. Wow. It's Eileen. It was beautiful.
Oh, I don't know who.
Hi.
See.
So beautiful.
Oh, there you are.
Did a great job.